Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is George Coons, the proprietor of Coons Locksmiths, one of the biggest and best in the area, and he has graciously agreed to come speak to us today about bump fixer locks, which is something that blew my mind. You can buy them on the website, anybody, for what, 10 bucks or so, and they can pick most all standard door locks. So he's going to speak about bump locks and normal lock picks and what we can do to protect ourselves from that, how we can configure our front and rear doors. So take it away, George.
Okay, well, let me set the record straight. My name is actually Stan Potter. George was intending to be here, had something come up, so I'm related to him. I'm the next best thing.
Okay.
So unfortunately. So my name is Stan Potter, and I am with Coons Locksmiths. We have been in the area for 40 plus years. George has actually owned the business for the last 31. We do lots of work all over Southwest Florida. I mean, specifically here. In fact, we were out here just this past weekend doing some service work. So certainly well within our territory. And, you know, just to take kind of a quick step back before we jump right into lock bumping, it's important to consider the security of your various homes and condominiums and townhouses on a couple of different levels. I mean, we obviously focus on the physical security part of it, which is the locks, the safes, the hardware, that type of thing. But there's also some good pieces of advice you can take, not only from an electronic or, let's say, an alarm system. That's an important facet. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that. If you guys have specific questions, I may be to help with that. And then also just discretion. That's something that goes without saying, but in this day and age, discretion is very, very important when it comes to security. So what that means is, if you're getting ready to travel, I mean, you don't have to announce it to the earth that you're getting ready to travel. If you've got maid services, bug people, cleaning services, things of that nature, you know, they need to know what they need to know to do their job. Don't be overly generous volunteering your information. That's an important thing to consider, because at the end of the day, whatever it is you do, and you know, it's probably the wrong way to start the presentation, but it goes back to that saying, where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, I can make it incredibly difficult for someone to get your stuff, but if they know you're gone for a month and they throw a rock through your window and no one sees them, and they come in and they bypass the security alarm, no one sees them, I mean, there's only so much you can rely on both the electronic and frankly the physical security to do. So it's important to consider that. Now, when we look at security, and again, focusing predominantly on the physical side of things, we really look at it as an outside-in approach. What that means is we want to keep people that are outside your home outside. Now, for some reason, if in fact they do try and gain entry, we want it to be as difficult as possible. Moving on to the next phase, if somehow they do get in, as we just talked about, there's no 100% certainty, then what we want to do is make it incredibly difficult for them to get the things that are most important to you. And it's important for me to say that I deal a lot in safes. Obviously, I'm responsible for the running of the company, so I have responsibilities in all the areas. So safes is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I can tell you I meet people every day that swear to me they don't have anything that they want to keep in a safe. And I'll be the first one to tell you that if you have something in your home that's important to you, then you have something that's worth putting in a safe. Because I hear it day in and day out, the most unfortunate part about a home break-in is the regret you feel when someone takes something that was given down, you know, or handed down to you through a grandparent to a parent and now onto you, that you want to keep in your family, that may or may not have any monetary value at all, but that's important to you. And that really can be said not only for stuff you would keep in a safe, but on your own property as well. So, any questions before I kind of talk about lock manipulation? All right. One of the things, and it was just brought up here, lock bumping, is a topic that has gained a lot of traction in the last couple of years. And I will tell you that lock bumping in and of itself as a practice has been around for 30 or 40 years, okay? Now, a couple of reasons why you're starting to hear more and more about it, why that threat may or may not be closer to your doorstep than it ever has been before. One, and we can all appreciate this, is the media. You know, they're always looking for content, always looking for topics, and this is one that is, you know, that they're going to more often when it comes to physical security. And the reason is it's got a lot of public interest. You know, no one wants to believe, you know, typically we can accept the fact if we come home and the window's smashed out or the door's kicked in that someone broke into our house. But it's harder for us to accept that someone literally using a couple of very simple tools could actually enter your house with no sign of visible forced entry. And especially if you had stuff hidden to where you weren't checking on it periodically, if someone were able to get that stuff, who knows how far or how long a time is going to pass before you actually even recognize that you were the victim of some sort of physical attack in terms of, you know, your stuff missing. And I can tell you there really is no hard and fast statistics, but the way the sheriff department used to approach this was burglaries, no sign of forced entry. And they lump everything together. That could be as simple as leaving the door unlocked to someone actually manipulating that lock. Meaning, you know, they're using something other than a key to turn that tumbler, okay? And, you know, this was going back a couple of years ago, but they were averaging 30 to 35 for the area, Lee County, 30 to 35 kind of break-in, no forced entry per month. So, you know, you can take, we have a lot of people in this area, and obviously that fluctuates with season, but that's a pretty big rate of people just leaving their door unlocked, and some of that's inadvertent. But when it comes down to it, lock bumping, of all the ways to manipulate a lock bumping is probably the simplest, requires the least amount of training, and is also probably the easiest in terms of accessibility. We talked about media being one of the big reasons why you're starting to hear more and more about this. Well, the internet is really one of the major conduits of that information. And not only is the internet kind of driving, sharing people, telling stories about bumping, learning about it, but like most things on the internet, there's a great degree of information with virtually no control. Like I mentioned, you can actually, depending on your mechanical aptitude, this doesn't require a massive amount of training or skill to learn how to do this. What it requires is a set of tools that, one part of it is essentially a crab hammer, you know, something you can buy at Walmart for $3.50. The other component is a special set of keys. Well, 20 or 30 years ago, those keys were very difficult to find because you could only get them really from locksmiths. They were the only people capable of creating them. Now, with the advent of the internet, those keys are becoming more and more popular. I've actually seen them at flea markets. I've seen them available for $10 or $15 online. And the unfortunate part is that as the media raises the awareness of it, a lot of times they point out the accessibility of these tools. So, you know, the simple reality is they are out there. Whether or not they're incredibly common is yet to be seen, but it is a very real threat. Now, lock bumping and lock picking is really the other way, and I'm sure everyone's heard that expression if they've dealt with a locksmith before. That's kind of what we do. You know, we have learned the skills in order to open locks without keys. Hopefully, if you've ever been locked out, you've appreciated that service. But lock bumping is also a tool that legitimate locksmiths use in order to get into locks. Occasionally, that's faster, that's more efficient, and ultimately is better served to your time. So, it can be used productively and efficiently, but more times than not, that's something that you're going to hear when it comes to the negative, the unforced entry, or I should say forced entry of a lock. And essentially, what the process of lock bumping is, and I don't want to belabor this point too much because I'll put you all to sleep, is basically when you take a key and wrap it with a great deal of force that comes to a sudden stop. Essentially all the different pieces and components of your lock can conceivably become aligned, meaning that the lock can then be turned, i.e. open. That's essentially as simple as that process is. Now, more than likely, most of your locks are susceptible to this type of attack because they don't have any type of inherent security built in to address it. If you've got Kwikset, if you've got Slag, I mean, most of those locks have vulnerabilities when it comes to this type of attack. There's really a couple things that you can do, and I'm going to focus specifically on that first and then touch on a couple other things. When you look at your front door or your side doors or your rear door, and especially your side and rear doors, the stuff that's probably less visible from the street, what you've got are opportunities for someone to come in and potentially employ these types of techniques. And if you haven't done anything to prevent it, you're really banking on that guy or girl not knowing what the heck they're doing, as opposed to your lock stopping them. All right, that's where we come in. For a relatively nominal fee, you can do things like upgrade your lock. If you have Kwikset, Defiant, Copper Creek, the Home Depot's du jour, special du jour, you know, those locks are inexpensive for a reason. They basically keep someone out, as the expression that's very common in our business is the honest people honest. It keeps the honest people honest. Well, you can accept that, or you can take it one step further. If you were to maybe make a modest increase in your hardware, there's a potential to go to Slag or, you know, for lack of a better word, a generic of the Slag lock, where you can add pins to the lock itself that make it more difficult for someone to be able to create that situation where everything lines up and allows the key to turn. Okay? Those are anti-proof bump pins is what they're called. They're barbell pins. There's a couple of different names for them. But really what they are bump resistant pins. And those can be effective to a degree. And that's really for the value conscious people that just want to make a couple of minor improvements without really going full bore. Now, the other option, and we also offer this in a variety of different brands, is a high security lock option. Now, the difference between like this stuff and what you'll go find in your local hardware store or your local big box retailer is that these are really multi-dimensional. Not only do they enhance the overall security of the lock, but they really focus on protecting your keys as well, with a restriction associated with those keys. So, and I'm going really fast, so I'll be able to answer any questions you guys have. As I mentioned before, there's no way to 100% prevent it. If you wanted to create an obstacle on entering your house that was unlike anything else really probably that you have now, unless you've already invested in this type of system, this would be one avenue to do it. This is what they call multi-lock. It's an Israeli company. It's actually under the umbrella of Assa Abloy, one of the largest security companies in the world. Okay? They make Medico. If any of you from the Northeast, you may have heard that brand. They make pretty much everything that Slag doesn't make. I mean, it would be the easiest way to say it. But multi-lock is something that has been highly effective. Used to be only businesses dealt with restricted key high security locks. That's what it used to be. I would say in the last 10 years, I've seen a massive change in that dynamic. Just to put it in perspective, I mean, the systems prior to this, we probably had less than 300 or 400 residential installs of the hardware. With this multi-lock, just given today's climate and the advantages that it has, we probably have 2,500. And again, this product has really only been available for about the last 10 or 15 years. Probably 25 to 3,000 residential installations. So it's definitely something that's kind of worked its way into that forum.